tomorrow night. We are learning Likkutei Sichot for Parshat Tzav. We're on page 204 and in chapter 8.
You're going to live after the fast tomorrow?
To Ramat Aviv.
So you have to listen to Kriyas Megillah, no?
No, because I'm coming back at midnight. I'm not going to be there at daybreak. Okay. You see, these are halachas that people that live in Chutz La'aretz don't even know about. That there's such a thing. Okay. So we finished yesterday with the teaching of the Maggid of Mezrich that lo tichbe means that kol inenei lo advarim lo tovim tichbe yichubu. That all the negative things, they, by having excitement for the good things, serving God, so all the negative things, they are extinguished. It's like the fire eats fire. And that's a very common thing. There's a whole sugya in Yuma, in Maseches Yuma, about 6 types of fire. And one of them is the fire that eats fire. And that's the type of fire that also was in the Beis HaMikdash. אוקיי, פתגם זה של המגיד מלמדנו, שכדי לכבות את הלא, יש צורך באש תמיד, בהתלהבות מתמדת לתורה ולמצוות. So this teaching obviously tells us that in order to extinguish the negative things, the lo, the not, you need a constant, an eternal flame for Torah and mitzvot. לא די בכך שבעבר או אף לפני דקה אחת הייתה לאדם התלהבות לתורה ומצוות. It's not enough that in the past or even a minute ago you had excitement for Torah and mitzvot. ההתלהבות צריכה להיות תמידית. The excitement has to be eternal. שכן כשישנה קרירות של רגע אחד עלול לא לחדור בינתיים. If there is any kind of gap, any kind of, call it that the fire went out for a minute even, so the other fire has a chance, the fire of the negative has a chance to rekindle. והרגע זה גם הטעם למצוות זכירת מעשה עמלק בכל יום ויום. This is also the reason that we remember what Amalek did actually every day. It's a machlokes, whether you have to remember it once a year or whether you should remember it every day. We who daven Shachris and we say Rabbeinu Tam, so at the end we have 6 of the 10 remembrances, right? And Levi Yitzchak's Siddur, not the Siddur, he brought it in one of his books, in Kedushas Levi, there's at the end, there's that Levi Yitzchak had 10 remembrances every day that he said. We only say 6. There's a lot that's been written about that, why we don't say all of them, whether there's more even, things that you should remember every day. But one thing that everybody agrees is that there's an opinion that you need to remember what Amalek did not just once a year on Shabbos Zachor, but you have to remember it every single day. So it says, because of the women who only say it once a year, or who hear it. There's also an opinion that it needs to be heard from the Torah. But if it needs to be heard from the Torah, so you heard it anyway in Kiteitze when you heard the reading of the Torah in Kiteitze. So the argument is that not everybody comes to shul to hear the laning, and it could be that they missed it. So we do one that's special. And because it is mentioned. Again, you could say the same thing about all the other places that it says Zachol. But for instance, Shabbos Zachol, so we all do that. There's no question. Everybody's heard Kiddush at least once. So there's a lot of discussion about all these things. Okay. So why is this? Why we remember Amalek every day? יש לזכור תמיד לבלתי תת לקרירות של עמלק לחדור חס וחלילה אף לרגע. ככתוב אש תמיד תוקד על המזבח לא תכבה. So the reason is that we don't want Amalek, who represents the coldness, and again we said this last time, it's the coldness that means that the person is, don't jump, don't be excited. So actually what we have here is that we have cold fire and hot fire. When you think about it, Amalek is cold fire. Now you can understand why hot fire eats cold fire. And it consumes even that. A cold fire would be like what you get from, there's props. There's all kinds of gases that when you burn them, or liquids, and when you burn them they give cold fire. They burn at a very low temperature. It's called low fire. So here is some kind of fire that you would call it cold. there was someone who posted there's a guy who writes a lot and is very popular in Israel. And it was a Talmud of Rav Steinsaltz, and he writes beautifully. And yesterday he wrote something from his own. That's when I said you should stick to what Rav Steinsaltz taught you. Don't give your two shtickle, because. So he wrote about his take on drinking on Purim. And apart from the fact, okay, he brought there's what's called the Shah Ephraim. It's one of the last poskim from the late 1700s, early 1800s. And he had this dream that ad velo yada means ad velo ad bichlal. You should not become inebriated. Rav Steinsaltz used to say it much better. He used to say that the mitzvah is not to drink on Purim. The mitzvah is ad velo yada, is to be inebriated on Purim. He says there's a big difference. If, in order to become inebriated, to become drunk, to not know you have to drink a lot, you're in trouble. He says, again, the Rebbe used to say this. The Rebbe used to say that if one drop of wine is not enough to get you inebriated, then a whole barrel won't help. That was how we used to say it. It's the same idea, that the point is not to drink, the point is to be inebriated. And you can become inebriated off of almost nothing. It all depends on your mindset. Of course, if it doesn't help, you take a little bit more, you try a little bit more. But the point is, you have to remember that my point is to get to a state of inebriation, not to drink. And when you have that in mind, you can very, very quickly, off of one cup of wine, for sure, you can get drunk. It all depends. It all depends on what your state of mind is. So anyway, he wrote something from the Shah Ephraim that was very Amalek-like. So I sent him not this Sichot, but the other one. That you're not supposed to. Why? Because you should be about yourself. You should have your wits and so on. That's not what ad lo yada means. In any case, עניין נוסף טמון באש התמיד היא מהווה הכנה לאש שלמעלה, כמאמר רז"ל, אף על פי שאש יורדת מן השמיים, מצווה להביא מן הידיעות. Another thing about the eternal flame is that it was the preparation, it was the starter, you could say, for the fire that descended from above. And there was fire that descended from above every day onto the altar. They didn't make do with the flame that was there all day long. And it also makes sense because every day was a different service. So there had to be an awakening from above also. The awakening from above came as fire that descended from above. What does it mean that fire descended from above? That's a good question. Did they actually see a fire coming down? Did they use a magnifying glass to take the rays of the sun and create new fire? There could be many different interpretations of what it meant. I don't remember that there's a description of how they did it. But there probably is somewhere, and I just don't know. I have to look it up. In any case, so the eternal flame is a preparation for this. What?
Came down in the shape of a lion.
No, that's how the fire burnt. The fire burnt in the shape of a lion in the first temple, and the shape of a dog in the second temple. And a dog gathering scraps. It's not very nice to say it, but they called it the way they saw it. So they saw that it wasn't the same thing it was in the first temple. So it's a preparation. This eternal flame is a preparation for the help that comes from above. So he says that the reason that there was an awakening from above is because before there was an awakening from below. And the awakening from below was the eternal flame below. So he says the same thing by us. That for us to receive the kindling from above, the flame from above, we also have to have some excitement from below. ברם, מתי מביאה היא את האש מן השמיים? כשהאש שלמטה היא בשלמות, או אז היא ממשיכה את האש שלמעלה. So when does the lower flame, the flame on the altar, the eternal flame, bring the flame down from the heavens? When it's lit, when it's full, not if it's something that's wavering. Okay? When it exists. then it can draw down the fire from above. הנוכחים בכך שבפרשיות הנוכחיות, צו ושמיני, בימי המילואים, למרות שכל המשכן וכליו והמזבח הוקמו כבר, והיה משה ואהרון, וכבר הוקרבו קורבנות, לא שרתה בכל זאת שכינה במעשה ידיהם, משום שעדיין נשאר רושמו של חטא העגל. We see that in our parshas, when they were erecting the tabernacle, they were already bringing, right, in Tzav and Shmini. Tzav and Shmini describe the 7 days of fulfillment, and then the 8th day is Shmini. And they describe after the tabernacle was erected, already Moshe Rabbeinu was the priest, and he was bringing all the sacrifices and everything that we need to do. And Aaron and his sons were sitting at the entrance of the tent of the tabernacle, and they were eating what they were supposed to eat, and they were doing what they were supposed to do. And yet, for 7 days, the Shekhinah did not come down, meaning the fire did not come down from heaven. Everybody saw this, that there was no fire coming down from heaven. So that was very distressing. Okay? לאחר שהושלמה האש שלמטה שכיבתה את הלא לגמרי וביטלה את העגל, אז ותצא אש מלפני השם שרתה שכינה במעשה ידיהם. So what was preventing this from happening? It says the residue left over still, and it still exists actually, from the golden calf. So when did the fire finally descend? When they made sure to have an eternal flame for 7 days. After 7 days of their eternal flame burning on the altar, and they're making sure that it not extinguish, then on the 8th day they saw the fire coming down from heaven. There was no fire before. Meaning it takes time. He's also telling you, what does it mean that it has to be whole? It means that it has to be kept for a while. So don't expect that the moment that you have excitement, the first time it'll work, because that's always how it works. Okay? Then if you never had excitement for Torah and mitzvahs, and suddenly you become excited, like a Baal Tshuva, the first time he's excited, then he has an awakening from above also. But then the second time, it's gone. Where'd it go? The first time was to encourage you. The second time is, if you want to be partners, I got to see that you're serious. So it takes time. It takes time for it to appear again. Sometimes that time could be many years. מהי חשיבותה העצומה של האש שלמעלה עד כדי כך שלשם השראתה יש צורך בשלמות העבודה של האש שלמטה? Why is the fire from above so significant that it requires that the service below be complete and whole, meaning that the flame below be complete? He says like this. So now he's going to explain why we need, even though we're working, why do we need inspiration from above? We're already doing what we're supposed to be doing. Why do we need the inspiration from above? הנבראים מוגבלים, ועבודתם הרוחנית והדרגות שלהם הם מגיעים מוגבלים אף הם. We as creations, as part of creation, are limited. And therefore, even our highest endeavors, spiritual, or the spiritual levels we reach, they are in the end limited. So we always say that if we were going to describe God, no matter what language we'd use, we could use the Torah's language, we could use anything we want, it would still be a limited depiction of what Hashem is. Therefore we don't describe in the first place. Or, according to the Baal Shem Tov, we describe because you have to have some connection, even though it's limited, and then you toss it away right away. You have something in your mind. That's what the Alter Rebbe calls to be in tshuva all your days. The tshuva is that however I perceived Hashem yesterday, however I perceived God yesterday, the way I defined Him, today I have to throw it out. That's called, we learned that from Hashem Himself. When He created the world, He created worlds and He destroyed them. That's what it says. So says the prophet. What does that mean? So the Gemara says, the Medrash says about this, these do not cause me pleasure, and this one does. So the question is, if He was creating worlds and so you imagine again, if He was creating worlds and then destroying them and creating new ones, shouldn't the Medrash say what was pleasurable about the final world that He decided to keep? It's sort of missing the main point. If you wanted to tell us that this world is different than all the other worlds, apart from telling us it caused Hashem pleasure, you could say that's the difference. Okay, but what's the difference? What caused that? Why was it different for Hashem? So the answer in Chassidus is very interesting. Chassidus says that it was different because it had learnt the secret of destroying and recreating. Meaning that in this world, a person learns a very important lesson to not be afraid to toss things away and to start anew. We have to learn how to start anew. How do you see this? That every day ends, it cleans out. It's even called v'taher yoma. The Gemara in Brachos calls it that the day is cleansed. Okay? Even though taher means light, but taher also means it's cleansed. It's destroyed. In the Zohar, sometimes tahirin are negative forces. They destroy things. Because taher has two meanings. I don't know what the etymology is in Aramaic, but it means two different things. So taher yoma really means that when the day ends and the night falls and people go to sleep, the previous day is wiped out. Now imagine that if people would tell this to you, if you didn't know about this world, every time you go to sleep, the previous day disappears. It's gone. You can't get back to it. So you say to yourself, so why should I continue? A state of complete despair. He says, no, when you live in this world, you get used to that idea. Because really, what is that idea for? It's not to put a chink in your efforts. It's not to spare you. That wasn't the point. The point is so that you can define Hashem and then throw it out. So that you can have a real relationship with Hashem. The real point was to teach us that you want to have a connection with the infinite, but if you don't ever define anything, then there won't be any relationship. You have to be able to define something. But then you have to also be able to throw it out once you've defined it. That's the teaching of He created worlds and He destroyed them. He wanted to teach us that in this world, everybody knows how to do that. Nobody has a problem with that. And children don't wake up in the morning and say, Ima, where did yesterday go? Like, I don't want to get up today because today's going to go the same place. He says, no, I know that today's going to end also, and all good things end, and so on. But the point is not that things that are good end. The point is that the good ends, and something better will start tomorrow. That's how you need to think of Hashem. That how I understood Him today was good, today I'm going to understand you better. So that's this idea, that we're limited. So we're limited, and we don't have an eternal existence. He says, if I want my actions, my efforts to have a sense of infinite, unlimited eternity to them, that I can only receive from Hashem. That's why I need the fire from above. The fire from above represents what we talked about when we talked about the world to come. Then why did the sages tell us to believe in the world to come? Because they want to add an element of infinity, of eternity, to our actions. It's the same idea. That's like the fire from above. That's excitement. If I understand that what I'm going to do now, I'm going to daven in 5 minutes, or 2 minutes, whatever it is. I can't see the clock. I should be able to see but I can't. It's in the wrong angle. So if I'm going to daven in 2 minutes, this davening will stand forever. Maybe not in my world, because my world changes all the time. But by Hashem, it'll stand forever. And I'm going to meet it after 120 years. I'm going to live this after 120 years. So I want my actions to have eternity in them. I want to feel that. I want to introduce it. It says that's the excitement that I bring from below that causes the excitement from above. The flame from below that brings the flame from above. Because Hashem is unlimited. So when I introduce Hashem I introduce the unlimited infinity of God into my actions, then my actions are infinite also. That's why in the 7 days of fulfillment, before the 8th day, which was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, they erected the tabernacle, and every day they took it apart. To show that like the day it ended, that the tabernacle served its purpose today, and it's gone, it's finished, because if it's only our devices, they are limited. If it's only us as agents, everything that we do is limited. It has an end. It ends at the end of the day. That's why they had to take it apart every day. That's the lesson from it. Same idea as night falling. רק ביום השמיני, only on the 8th day, after, כשהייתה השראת השכינה ותצא אש מלפני השם, when they saw the fire descending, הוקם המשכן ולא פרקו. Then they didn't need to dismember, to take the Mishkan apart at the end of the day. אז הייתה הקמה אמיתית בקיום נצחי. Then they had an eternal structure that they had built. כך יובן גם עניין זה ששבעת ימי המילואים ביום השמיני. האש למעלה באה דווקא ביום השמיני, שכן ידוע ששבעה הם ימי ההיקף, כלומר הבחינות הקשורות לעולמות, ואילו שמיני הוא למעלה מההיקף, אור שלמעלה מן העולמות, והוא העניין האמור של אש שלמעלה. That's why it happened on the 8th day, because we know that 7 represents nature, and 8 represents that which is above nature. That's why 8 in Hebrew means fat, because it's above. Shamen, he's fat. Why is he fat? Because he's above nature. He's not the natural order of things. The 7 is savea, he's full, but the 8 is already fat. It goes beyond what nature calls for. And so therefore this was on the 8th day, because the 8th day represents that which is above nature. And we will, God willing, resume tomorrow at 7:30. And should have... So yesterday was Yud Aleph, today is Yud Bet. We're already in Purim, and like I said yesterday after we finished, that the Rebbe has a letter on it, and he quotes from the Magid Meisharim. The Magid Meisharim has a beautiful, beautiful hisbonenus, a meditation, a contemplation of the first Mishnah in Maseches Megillah, that Kriyat Megillah 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, לא פחות ולא יותר. That you can read Megillah on the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. So certainly, yesterday was the first day of Purim, because you can already read the Megillah. Megillah is one of the mitzvahs, and you're yotze when you do it. Again, if you don't have a chance to hear it later, and now somebody has a chance to read it to you, so you can learn it. By the way, it's interesting that people get very, very, very on the 15th, if they're on the 15th or the 14th, if they're elsewhere. But you can be Yotze on the 11th and 12th if there's no other opportunity. The bracha, everything. So the idea is that the Rebbe has a letter on this that he quotes from the Magid Misharim, has a very interesting contemplation on it. And the Rebbe says about this, if I'm not mistaken, that these days are already part of Purim. It's already 11 plus 12 plus 13 plus 14 plus 15 equals 65. Okay. Because you have 5 times 10, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is equal to 15. So that's 65 together. That's Shem Adni. Aleph Daled Nun Yud. And then he develops it from there. Okay, we won't do that now.
Jacob, do you want him, Eli?